Hello, BookTube, and welcome back to March Mystery Madness. This is a refrain you're hearing often from me, hopefully close to every day, because this is March is the month when we're having a big BookTube event. Plenty of channels all gathered together to make videos about our love of murder mysteries. Some of us love murder mysteries so much, we even love the packages they come in. The event is now years old. It was created by Elizabeth of Lizzie Fay Loves Books, and now the guest host roster has expanded to a dozen BookTube channels, and the whole glitzy array of stuff. We've got the Goodreads group and the reading sprints and the live streams. It's all so much fun, where we all talk about all the kinds of mysteries that we love to read. Most people love to read mysteries. I know of only a few freakish holdouts who don't. And on this channel, obviously, I'm doing new releases most of the time. Considering the fact that I get 10 books in the mail every day and that some of them are murder mysteries, it seems almost unconscionable for me to be talking about, you know, an old Marjorie Allingham novel, unless it's somebody makes a new paperback that collects a few of those. That I wouldn't mind at all. And that is true today. Today we are going to talk about a new mystery. It's very hyped. It's got a lot of publicity material behind it, and we've seen it on this channel a couple of times. It's The Wolf and the Watchman by Niklas Not Okdag. Niklas, I'm told that the name roughly translates to night and day. And this is, we talked earlier in the month, we talked at the beginning of March Mystery Madness about the different sub-kinds of murder mysteries. There's the huge umbrella of murder mysteries where someone dies and someone has to figure out why. That very basic DNA. But that the infinite forms that can take. And this is obviously pitched to historical. One of those infinite forms is where the historical era is a huge part of why the book is written, of why it's presented to us the way it is. And that's true in this case, too. It's a lovely thing. And in between when we first got it, I first got an advanced copy, and then I got this finished copy. In between now and then I read it. I liked it quite a bit. It has slow parts, and the prevalence, the huge best-selling prevalence of Scandinavian noir in the last 30 years, and also books like Girl with a Dragon Tattoo and even Girl on a Train have introduced into the thriller and mystery genre a certain confusion, a categorical confusion between an unfriendly character, a character who is unfriendly to the other people in the book, and an unlikable character. In other words, that we don't like the character. There's a crucial difference between those two. Okay, obviously. There's a crucial difference between those two. And it's perfectly okay if you have a murder mystery, or especially a police procedural, to have the first kind. A character who is gruff and flinty and who nobody particularly likes in the novel, who doesn't work well with others, but is still brilliant, can still get justice, can still see through a fog and encounter, you know, essential clues. There's a big difference between that and a character who is completely unlikable. We just don't like, and we don't want to spend any time with them as a result of that. Where if they're going to be the focus of the book and they are completely unlikable, then we're going to find another book. We're not going to say, oh, you know, I work at the DMV and two of my coworkers are really unlikable and there's nothing I can do about it. When it's a book, you can put it down and find some other place to go. Occasionally this book skirts that. I want to read you, for those of you who maybe don't remember, since I have one or two videos in my back catalog, I want to read you a rough plot description and then talk about this just a bit. Early one morning in autumn of 1793, Watchman Michael Cardell is awakened from his drunken slumber with reports of a body seen floating in the larder, once a pristine lake on Stockholm's southern isle, but now a rancid bog. Efforts to identify the bizarrely mutilated corpse are entrusted to the incorruptible lawyer Cecil Winge, who enlists Cardell's help to solve the case. But time is short. Winge's health is failing, the monarchy is in shambles, and a whispered conspiracy abounds. Winge and Cardell become immersed in a brutal world of gutter snipes and thieves, mercenaries and madams. From a farmer's son who is led down a treacherous path when he seeks his fortune in the capital, to an orphan girl consigned to the workhouse by a pitiless parish priest, their investigation peels back layer upon layer of the city's labyrinthine society, The church and the poor, the pious and the fallen, the living and the dead, all collide and interconnect with the body pulled from the lake. And as you can tell, even from that description, I can tell you, it holds true throughout the book. As you can tell from that description, the Stockholm of the day is a large part of this book. The atmosphere, the history, is a large part of this. This is, in other words, a historical novel in which a murder takes place, rather than a murder novel set in a period in history. And I wanted to read you... Frida, I think you killed it. I think it's dead. No, I think you did. I think you killed it. Why don't you just... This is the description of what we just heard, of Cardell being awoken, literally by people who want his help, when he is passed out drunk in a bar. Reluctantly, he opens his eyes and stares out across the vast plain of stained table. When he makes an attempt to lift his head, his cheek sticks to the wooden surface, and he inadvertently pulls his wig off as he stands up. He curses and uses it to wipe his brow before tucking it inside his jacket. His hat rolls down onto the floor, its crown dented. He punches it out and then pulls it onto his head. His memory is beginning to return. He is at Cellar Hamburg and must have drunk himself senseless. A glance over his shoulder reveals others in a similar condition. The few drunks that the proprietor considered affluent enough not to toss into the gutter are sprawled over benches and across tables until the morning, when they will stagger away to receive the reproaches of those waiting at home. Not so for Cardell. A crippled war veteran, he lives alone, and his time is no one but his own. And that's on the first page. And that gives you a real good sense. This author really writes well, first of all. And also, Frida, I think you killed it. I really do. I think you should move on to something else. There's nothing more you can do except drown out my videos. This is also a warning to us right away at the beginning of this book that we are going to be dealing with a flawed hero. One of our two heroes will be very flawed. And that's always interesting. It's always interesting to me when it's announced ahead of time. I often find it more interesting when it's not. I find it more interesting when we have to sort of come to the realization that our main hero is flawed. Alcohol almost always being the way. But I want to read you one other bit, because it goes to what I mentioned about this book being atmospheric first and procedural second. This is the beginning of a later chapter. The name of the pub is the Perdition. A thick layer of soot coats the walls, but anyone who strains a little can make out the mural. It is the dance of death. Peasants and burghers, noblemen and priests join hands around a skeleton who is playing a fiddle as black as tar. The painting makes many ill at ease, and a few customers can easily be counted until the hour is late and the level of intoxication has stripped all decorations of their relevance. The innkeeper Gedda has opposed all attempts to persuasion to whitewash his walls. The mural is painted by Hofbro himself, he snarls, and a masterpiece at that. And little gestures like that are all through this book, little atmospheric gestures like that, all the way into the end, even when the plot has really taken off. But it takes about halfway through the book for the plot to really take off. And once it does, even then, when plot developments are happening at a much faster rate than they do in the first half of the book, this is one of those murder mysteries, it's endemic for historicals, where you really need a little patience. But even then, even in the second half of the book, when the plot has started to gain sort of downhill momentum, the author will still stop routinely for atmospheric details like that don't mean anything, or that mean very little. And you have to be in the mood for that. And that's why I say that this is much more a historical novel in which a murder takes place than it is a murder mystery set in a historical era, because readers who love historical novels are accustomed to that sort of writing. That's, in fact, one of the reasons they go to murder mysteries or historical novels, is because they get just surrounded with historical details like that. So you have to be ready for that if you're curious about this book, The Wolf and the Watchman. You have to get ready for that, because that's what you're going to get in here. This is a very atmospheric and at times very slow-moving historical novel. It has a cumulative power, and the two main characters are a good pair. They're a real good pair once things get going, once we're done with the long introductions. So that's going to be our murder mystery for today. It is another permutation of the historical murder mysteries. It's often a big temptation for people who want to write a historical murder mystery. They do so much research. Last thing in the world you want, whether you're writing a historical novel or a historical murder mystery, but especially if it's a murder mystery, where the popular conception is already going to be that you did a bare amount of research. The last thing that you want, if you're the writer of a book like this, is for someone to write a letter, hopefully not in public, but it could happen, pointing out a mistake you've made, or more than one mistake. That's the last thing you want. And that does happen. And as a result, people who write this sort of book will often research it to a fairly well. And whether it's historical novels or historical murder mysteries, a lot of times, if an author has researched something to a fairly well, that author then wants to include as much of that research as possible, usually to the detriment of the book. Not always, though. I mean, you know as well as I do, some historical novels that are 1,000 pages long, and they're mostly the author's research thinly guised into the book, and you love it for that reason. This is along those lines, rather than along the lines of, for instance, name a historical murder mystery series that is a murder mystery series first, and historical the Brother Cadfael mysteries by Ellis Peters, where you don't get hit over the head with the atmospheric historical details at all. They're all accurate, but you don't get them like that. They're very lean, they're very to the point. This is not that, so you have to, gauge your reading accordingly. I would suggest borrowing it from the library and see if you like it. You're definitely going to like the author's tone. I looked high and low. I think the author just writes in English. I don't see any credited translator, so I'm assuming this is just his own work. But that's going to be our March Mystery Madness for today. It is a particular kind of murder mystery where it's a historical novel, where a murder happens to take place. Another good example would be Instance of the Finger Post. Stuff like that. I'm sure you know many examples like that. It's a good distinction to draw, because if you do draw that distinction ahead of time, then you can predict whether or not some of these books will please you or not, depending on what you're looking for. A lot of times I've had people go into a big, fat, atmospheric historical novel, drawn in by the promise of a murder on the dust jacket copy or whatever, and they get disappointed, and it's because they have not made that distinction ahead of time in their minds, and the publisher certainly isn't going to do it for you. So I thought I'd wrap that up for now. That is March Mystery Madness for today. I think tomorrow we're going to do another historical, but we'll talk all about that. I will wrap this up for now, but I will see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.